Jan Burton opens her son's bedroom door to clean while he's at school and finds a handwritten note tucked under his pillow that makes her legs buckle beneath her. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I can't pretend everything is fine anymore. What she does in the next 24 hours doesn't just save Cliff's life, it changes the entire trajectory of heavy metal history. Castro Valley, California. October 1978. 16-year-old Cliff Burton is drowning in a darkness so complete he can't imagine ever seeing light again. The shy, awkward teenager with thick glasses and wild hair that never seems to cooperate no matter how much he combs it, has been struggling with depression for 2 years. Ever since his body started changing and the world became a more complicated, hostile place where he doesn't seem to fit anywhere. High school is a daily nightmare of humiliation and isolation. Castro Valley High School, with its beige concrete walls and fluorescent lighting, has become a prison where every hallway holds potential for embarrassment. The popular kids mock his second-hand clothes that never fit right, his nervous stutter when teachers call on him, his complete inability to talk to girls without turning red and forgetting how to form sentences. The bullying isn't just name-calling, it's systematic cruelty designed to remind Cliff daily that he doesn't belong. They hide his bass guitar case so he misses music class. They spread rumors about him being gay because he plays classical music. They imitate his stutter in exaggerated voices whenever he reads aloud, making the room erupt in laughter while teachers pretend not to notice. The jocks are the worst. Brad Hutchinson and his Letterman jacket crew view torturing Cliff as their personal hobby. They shove him into lockers when teachers aren't looking, calling him freakin' weirdo, and worse subwords that cut deeper than physical pain because they attack his self-worth. Even worse than bullying is the crushing loneliness. He eats lunch alone in the music room, practicing bass while classmates laugh and make plans for parties he'll never attend. He walks home alone while groups pile into cars, heading to adventures he can only imagine. He spends weekends in his bedroom, learning complex pieces, creating beautiful music no one else cares about or understands. His parents, Ray and Jan Burton, are fundamentally good people who love their son with the fierce, protective love that only parents can feel, but they come from a generation that doesn't understand teenage depression, that sees it as a character flaw rather than a medical condition, as something their son should be able to snap out of with enough willpower and positive thinking and maybe some fresh air and exercise. Ray Burton works long hours at the plumbing supply company, coming home tired and wanting peace, not more problems to solve. When Cliff tries to express how empty and hopeless he feels, how some mornings he literally cannot find a reason to get out of bed, his father suggests he join a sports team to toughen up and meet some normal kids. Jan Burton, who works part-time at an insurance office to help make ends meet, sees her son's sadness but interprets it through the lens of her own upbringing during the Depression, when survival meant focusing on practical concerns rather than emotional ones. When Cliff mentions that he sometimes doesn't see the point in continuing to live, she tells him to count his blessings and think about children in other countries who have real problems like hunger and war. She means it kindly, but her words make Cliff feel guilty for his pain on top of everything else, as if being depressed in suburban California is a luxury he doesn't deserve. They mean well, both of them, but their inability to recognize the depth of their son's psychological suffering only makes Cliff feel more isolated, more convinced that he's fundamentally broken, that the darkness inside him is something shameful that marks him as weak and unworthy of love or understanding. He begins to see himself through their eyes as a moody teenager who needs to grow up and stop feeling sorry for himself, as a disappointment who can't appreciate all the advantages he's been given. The breaking point comes on a Tuesday in October when Cliff walks into his first period English class to find cruel graffiti about him, scrawled across his desk in permanent marker. Words so ugly and personal, they feel like physical blows. Mrs. Henderson sees it too, but instead of addressing it or showing sympathy, she simply hands him a bottle of cleaning solution and tells him to take care of that mess while the class snickers behind his back. That afternoon, Cliff goes home to an empty house and sits on his bed surrounded by the bass guitars and classical sheet music that usually provide his only comfort. But today, even music feels pointless. What's the point of creating beauty in a world that seems determined to crush anything different, anything sensitive, anything that doesn't fit the narrow definition of what teenage boys are supposed to be? He pulls out a piece of notebook paper and begins writing what he believes will be his final communication with the world. The words flow easier than anything he's ever written, as if the pain that's been building inside him for years has finally found its voice. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I can't pretend everything is fine anymore. I can't keep smiling when teachers ask how I'm doing. I can't keep saying I'm okay when you ask why I seem so sad all the time. I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for so long I can't remember what okay feels like. I know you'll blame yourselves, but this isn't your fault. You're good parents. I'm just broken in a way that can't be fixed. I've tried so hard to be normal, to fit in, to be the son you deserve, but I can't do it anymore. The effort it takes just to get through each day is more than I have left. I'm tired of being afraid to speak up in class because someone will make fun of how I sound. I'm tired of eating lunch alone while everyone else has friends. I'm tired of pretending that the things kids say to me don't hurt. I'm tired of being the weird kid who plays classical music on electric bass. I'm tired of being me. Maybe if I was different, if I was stronger, if I was more like the other kids, I could handle this. But I'm not, and I can't. I love you both so much, and I'm sorry I couldn't be better. Take care of each other. Try to remember the good times instead of this. Please don't let them play any sad music at my funeral. Play something beautiful instead. Play Bach or Beethoven. Play something that proves music is the only pure thing in this ugly world. Love, Cliff. He folds the note carefully and slides it under his pillow, then lies down and stares at the ceiling, feeling a strange sense of peace for the first time in months. He's made his decision. Tomorrow, when his parents are at work and the house is empty, he'll drive his father's car to the bridge over Castro Valley Creek and finally end the pain that's been eating him alive. But Cliff doesn't know that his mother, Jan, has decided to come home early from her job at the insurance office to surprise him with his favorite dinner, spaghetti and meatballs with garlic bread. She doesn't know about the note hidden under his pillow, doesn't know about the plan forming in her son's mind, doesn't know that she has less than 24 hours to save his life. Jan Burton is a small woman with gentle eyes and calloused hands from years of working multiple jobs to help support the family. She grew up during the Depression, learned to find joy in small things, to push through hardship without complaint. She loves her son with a fierce, protective love that would move mountains if necessary. But like many parents of her generation, she struggles to understand the invisible wounds that don't heal with band-aids and kisses. She arrives home at 3:30, expecting to find Cliff in his room practicing bass as usual. She can hear the faint sound of music coming from upstairs, a classical piece she doesn't recognize, but that sounds beautiful and melancholy floating through the house. On impulse, she decides to surprise him by cleaning his room, something she rarely does now that he's a teenager and values his privacy. She knows he's been struggling lately, seems sadder than usual, but she assumes it's normal teenage moodiness, the kind of phase all kids go through before they grow out of it and become responsible adults. She opens his bedroom door quietly, not wanting to disturb his practice, planning to quickly straighten his desk and maybe put away some clean laundry. The music continues from downstairs. He must be in the living room working on a particularly difficult piece. As she smooths his rumpled bedspread, her hand brushes against something crinkly under his pillow. Curious, she lifts the pillow and finds the folded piece of notebook paper covered in her son's careful handwriting. The first line stops her heart. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Jan's knees give out and she sinks onto the bed, clutching the note with shaking hands as she reads words that reshape her understanding of everything she thought she knew about her son's life, her family, her role as a mother. Each sentence is a revelation and a condemnation, showing her how blind she's been to her child's suffering, how her attempts to help have actually made him feel more alone. The note is dated today, which means whatever Cliff is planning, it's going to happen soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe tonight, maybe any moment now. If he comes upstairs and realizes she's found his letter, Jan Burton sits on her son's bed holding his suicide note and makes a decision that will echo through the decades to come. influencing not just one troubled teenager's life, but the entire landscape of heavy metal music. She's not going to panic. She's not going to confront him with anger or lectures about how much he has to live for or guilt about how much this would hurt his family. She's going to do something much harder and much braver. She's going to listen. Really listen. For the first time in her son's life, she's going to hear what he's actually trying to tell her instead of what she thinks he should be feeling. Jan folds the note carefully and places it back under the pillow exactly where she found it. Then she goes downstairs to where Cliff is sitting, cross-legged on the living room floor, his white Rickenbacker bass across his lap, playing a Bach invention with the kind of technical precision and emotional depth that should make any parent burst with pride. But instead of pride, Jan feels heartbreak, because now she understands that this beautiful music her son creates is coming from a place of profound pain, that his extraordinary talent is tangled up with a suffering so deep he's willing to die, rather than continue carrying it. "That's beautiful," she says softly, settling into the chair beside him. "What is it?" Cliff looks up, surprised by her presence and her genuine interest. Usually when his parents acknowledge his music, it's with polite tolerance or suggestions that he practice more quietly. But something in his mother's voice is different today, warmer, more present. "Bach invention number 13 in a minor," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been working on it for weeks, trying to get the fingering right on the bass. It's not really meant for this instrument, but I like the challenge of adapting it." "It sounds sad," Jan observes, not as criticism, but as simple recognition. Cliff's hands still on the strings. No adult has ever acknowledged the emotional content of his music before, never recognized that he's trying to express feelings too complex for words through the language of notes and rhythms. "I guess it is sad," he says carefully, watching his mother's face for signs of disapproval or discomfort. "A lot of the music I like there's something about minor keys that feels honest." Jan nods thoughtfully. Honest how? And suddenly, incredibly, Cliff finds himself talking. Not the surface-level conversation he usually has with his parents about school assignments and household chores, but real talk about real things. About how music helps him process emotions he doesn't understand. About how classical composers like Bach and Beethoven seem to understand that life contains equal measures of beauty and sorrow. About how playing their music makes him feel less alone, less like a freak for experiencing feelings so intense they sometimes threaten to overwhelm him. Jan listens without interrupting, without offering solutions or advice or reassurance. She just sits in her chair and gives her son the gift of her complete attention while he shares pieces of his inner life he's never revealed to anyone. When he finally runs out of words, Jan is quiet for a long moment, then she says something that changes everything. "Cliff, I need to tell you something important, and I need you to really hear me, okay? You are not broken. You are not too sensitive. You are not weird or wrong for feeling things deeply. You're an artist, and artists have always seen the world differently than other people. That's not a flaw. That's a gift." Cliff stares at his mother, hardly believing what he's hearing. These are words he's dreamed of hearing his entire life, but never dared hope for. "I know high school is hard right now," Jan continues. "I know the other kids don't understand you, and I know that hurts, but high school isn't forever. In 2 years you'll graduate and go out into the world where there are other people like you, other musicians, other artists who will appreciate what makes you special." She pauses, choosing her next words carefully, knowing they might be the most important words she ever speaks to her son. "Cliff, if you're ever feeling so sad that you think about not wanting to be here anymore, I need you to promise me you'll come talk to me first. Not because I want to lecture you or tell you you're wrong to feel that way, but because I love you exactly as you are, and I can't imagine this world without your music in it." The tears come then, years of held-back emotion flooding out of Cliff in great, gasping sobs that shake his whole body. Jan slides out of her chair and onto the floor beside him, wrapping her arms around her son while he cries out the loneliness and fear and despair he's been carrying alone for so long. "I found your note," she whispers into his hair. "I found it, and I want you to know that everything you wrote about feeling broken and different and tired, soul of that is valid. Your pain is real, And it matters, and you're not weak for feeling it. But you're also not alone anymore, okay? We're going to figure this out together. That night, instead of planning his death, Cliff talks to his parents about depression, about bullying, about the crushing weight of feeling different in a world that punishes difference. Ray Burton, initially uncomfortable with such emotional conversations, gradually opens up about his own struggles with fitting in as a young man, his own feelings of inadequacy that he's never shared with anyone. Over the following weeks, Jan researches teenage depression, finds a therapist who specializes in working with creative, sensitive adolescents, advocates fiercely for her son at school, when teachers and administrators dismiss the bullying as normal teenage behavior. More importantly, she creates space in their home for Cliff's music to be not just tolerated but celebrated. She attends his garage band practices, learns the names of classical composers whose work he admires, asks questions about his creative process that show she values his artistry as legitimate and important. The transformation isn't immediate or magical. Cliff still struggles with depression throughout his remaining high school years, still faces bullying and rejection, and days when the darkness feels overwhelming, but he's no longer facing it alone. He has a mother who sees him, really sees him, and recognizes his sensitivity as strength rather than weakness. By senior year, Cliff has found his tribe among other musicians and artists at school. His depression becomes manageable with therapy and the knowledge that he has a support system that won't let him fall. He starts writing his own music, complex bass compositions that blend classical technique with the emerging sound of heavy metal. 6 years later, when Cliff Burton joins Metallica and revolutionizes the role of bass guitar in heavy metal, he carries with him the lesson his mother taught him that October afternoon, that being different isn't being broken, that sensitivity is a superpower, that the very qualities that make life harder for artists are the same qualities that allow them to create beauty that touches other people's souls. Jan Burton attends every Metallica concert within driving distance, standing in the back of smoky clubs and later massive arenas, watching her son transform his teenage pain into music that helps other young people feel less alone. She keeps the suicide note in a small box in her bedroom dresser, not as a reminder of how close she came to losing him, but as proof of how much can change when someone chooses to listen with their whole heart. After Cliff's death in 1986, Jan finds another note hidden in his bass case, written years after that first desperate letter. It reads, "Mom, thank you for saving my life that day when I was 16. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Everything good that came after started with you choosing to listen instead of lecture. I love you. Cliff." Today, Jan Burton works with organizations that support families dealing with teenage depression and suicide prevention. She tells her story to parents who are struggling to understand their own sensitive, artistic children. Her message is always the same. Listen first. Judge never. Love completely. The note that almost ended Cliff Burton's life became the beginning of a legacy that extends far beyond his musical contributions. It became proof that sometimes the most powerful thing a parent can do is sit quietly and hear their child's pain without trying to fix it, judge it, or make it go away. How many teenage artists are sitting in their bedrooms right now, writing their own desperate letters, convinced they're too different to survive in this world? How many of them need just one person to say, "You're not broken, you're an artist"? And that's exactly what the world needs. Jan Burton knows the answer to that question, and she spends every day making sure that as many parents as possible know it too. That's what real love looks like. That's what saving a life means. That's why we still have Master of Puppets and Orion and every other piece of music that flows from the heart of someone brave enough to feel deeply in a world that often punishes such courage. Thank you, Jan Burton. Thank you for listening. Thank you for saving. Thank you for saving not just your son, but all the music he would create, all the lives his music would touch, all the young artists who would find hope in his story. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is put down our own agenda and pick up someone else's pain. Sometimes love means sitting with darkness instead of demanding light. That's the lesson of October 1978. That's what it means to save a life. That's why Cliff Burton lived long enough to change the world.